It's the county conversation, and today, for the final episode of the season, we have our end of year awards. It's just me and Nick today. Nobody distracting the conversation like county championship winning coaches. No one with that ridiculous knowledge of the game. We have
no awards either, really. It's just
It's a good point. We're just saying what we liked.
Kudos. You get a lot of
kudos.
The
county kudos. Right. We're going to run through a number of kind of awards, categories. We're going through just reminiscing over what the season has been. We've got things like player of the season, of course, match of the season, moments of the season, innings, dumbest part of the season, my personal favourite, disappointment of the season, and then team of the season. Not as an 11, but as a whole. We're not going to go through here the two openers, middle order, bowlers, etc., etc. But right, we're also doing this kind of live. We weren't really sure what the best way to do it was, whether it was to compare answers beforehand and then lose some authenticity, but then be more prepared, or you go live and so you kind of shock each other with your choices. And we thought that was the better way of doing it. So we've gone away, we've done our homework, and we've come to the table with our answers at hand. Hopefully we have agreements in some places, hopefully we have disagreements in other.
Well, I hope there's some disagreement. It'll be very short. Given that you've just said there that we've sort of sacrificed preparation time for shock levels. If we if we sit here with the same answers, we'll be profoundly unprepared and profoundly unsurprised.
That is a shame. I mean, we haven't sacrificed individual preparing levels. We just thought like maybe this would be the right way to go. Anyway, player of the season, I actually think this is where we will agree, because in my mind, there is literally only one answer. I'm going to let you go first.
No, I want you to go first.
If
there's literally one answer, I'm intrigued by
it just is Liam Dawson.
Then we don't have the same name, so that's a good start.
He's cool. So 950 runs at 60, 3 centuries, 5 half centuries, 54 wickets at 25. I think there are times to be kind of nuanced and dig beyond the numbers, but he has literally put up like one of the best seasons as a batter this year and one of the best seasons as a bowler, and he's the same human.
Yeah, but see, I've got an all-rounder for you.
Okay.
I'm gonna and these are, bear in mind, we're talking across the board. These didn't have to be championship focused.
That is true.
But in both cases, they are. I've gone with John Simpson, who averaged 75 with a bat.
Yeah,
scored 5
career-defining year.
Scored 1,197 runs. Friend of the show. Crucial, and also he's not obviously doesn't bowl, but he came to Sussex. He'd never captained in his life. Skippered them to the Division 2 title. Took 44 dismissals it was as a keeper. So I actually think Dawson and Simpson are similar answers. I also think silverware wins out, doesn't it? John Simpson didn't have a great year last year.
That is true.
Left Middlesex in November, somewhat out of the blue. Remember him telling me in February that it sort of taken him 3 months to even like emotionally get beyond the fact that he wasn't there anymore. He'd moved out of London, renting a flat off some nice person in Hove, and it's gone far better personally and probably collectively than he could or anyone else could have imagined.
I think I really like that answer, actually. I think it's quite... John Simpson's season's very romantic this year. I'm kind of just pulling up his own personal numbers. He's 36. Like, he's at the tail end of his career. He's moved county. He has literally doubled his average this year, or more to the point, his career average in first-class cricket is 35. He's averaged 70. He's played 215 first-class matches. That's so many days. If all of those days go to completion, that's 860 days of cricket.
So last summer, 2023,
yeah,
albeit in Div 1, John Simpson averaged 23.5, made 4 half centuries, didn't make 100, scored 564 runs. So he's more than doubled. He's trebled his average from last year. He made 5 tons, one of which was a double. 3 runs short of 1,200 for the season, 13 runs short of a 600. But he shook hands at 20 past 4. Yes, not yesterday, whenever the last day of the season was. Walked off. Didn't need a 600. Didn't need to do against the former club. He won the title against Middlesex. Another bit of romance for you there. I think he's done remarkably. But the thing that fascinates me with Simpson, actually, and I do find this really interesting, is that Middlesex and Middlesex members and Middlesex players probably thought they knew what they were losing when they lost Simpson. They thought they were losing a very good keeper, real constant presence in, at the time, a bit of turmoil at the club. I don't think anyone thought they were losing someone who was going to go elsewhere and score 1,200 runs and average 75, and captain. He never captained professionally in his life. I think it's a remarkable story. Did you ever have any other names? Did you go through anyone
very
else?
Happy. No, I was going to list out off another couple, but I'm very, very happy to cede this one to you, and we give the County Conversations Player of the Season award to John Simpson for just the turnaround, as you mentioned, and the fact that at the end of it, it's rubber stamped with a trophy, with some silverware. I think I probably went down I think Liam Dawson, I've gone like, you were the best player, so you win. Whereas actually,
but I'm arguing that John Simpson was the best player.
No, but I feel like you're no. Liam Dawson's better than John Simpson. I'm not gonna.
I've presented me with numbers, and I presented you with higher numbers.
And the problem is, you presented me with romance, and I am.
I'll tell you what, Liam Dawson took more wickets. Liam Dawson took more wickets.
That's a good point. Anyway, the only other name and this was going to be it was a little bit of just like saying David Beckham because he's like on paper the best, but like, and it's not that nuanced. I wanted to just mention Dan Worrell because I just find in the modern day when players effectively, everyone uses the wobble seam and everyone bowls in largely the same way, where it's you hit a length, you try and hit the top of off, you wobble it down there and you hope it nips in or nips out, and you're basically playing kind of tombola cricket to an extent. I love the fact that one of the best performing cricketers in the country that is leading the attack of the county champions is like an old school away swing bowler going, you know how I'm going to try and get you out, but you can't do anything about it. And I do think, although he was fourth in Div 1 wickets takings, like Jamie Porter, Kyle Abbott, Liam Dawson above him, the difference between averaging, and this is again really obvious, Dan Worrell's averaged 16 with the ball this year compared to Porter, who's averaged 19. Yeah, but the Oval's like day one at the Oval, it nips about. It's difficult, and they win the toss and bowl. He's got at 2.5. Just the difference between your average being bowling out a team for 160 versus your average being bowling a team out for 190, 200 is remarkable. I'm going to give you like 30 seconds if you want to add anyone else, and then we're moving on.
The only thing I was going to say on Worrell is that I always find it so interesting asking players, who's the best bowler you face? And everyone says Dan Worrell. Like, it's just, do you know what I mean? The only other name I had here was David Payne. Obviously, he was on the pod a week ago.
You're just listing people we've spoken to, and I like it.
But I guess it proves that we've got the right guests on. No,
lovely. That's good.
That bit was all very Champo based. If we're talking about the best performing, the best player in the other major county comp, let's say. We've not touched on Ed Barnard yet. Another friend of the pod. David Payne was the best player in the best team, and frankly, the best player in the whole competition in the Blast. And I think it's fair to say that if David Payne had been called up to the England T20 squad for that Australia series that overlapped the Blast finals day, I don't think Gloucestershire would have won the Blast. So
I think you've given two fantastic answers so far, Nick.
So
I think we've got off to a great start.
Good start, yeah. So next one we had down. Are you presenting this, or are we just sharing it? I was going to let you have a go. What's yours?
So we're doing match of the season.
Should we go match of the season? I want to ask you how you want to do this. I put down a game I was at and a game I wasn't at, because I felt like being there is a thing, isn't it? It's like, but
yeah, okay. I think what I've learned in the last minute is I'm going to keep control of the categories because I've got them in a list. So we will run through them. But I'm going to... So I like your caveat of matches you have been, haven't been. I hadn't followed that. I'd just gone like... And again, I think I'm being very county championship centric. And I settled on 2 matches, but I want to save one for my moment of the season. Because, hey, build a bit of suspense. And so again, perhaps a bit of recency bias. Your moment of the
season is now.
Yeah, perhaps a bit of recency bias. But Somerset versus Surrey, Somerset winning at Taunton. I thought Yaz Rana of the Wisden Cricket Podcast, a very fine rival podcast. It's terrible. Never listen to it. Don't do it. Made an exceptional point about this is we often associate great cricket matches with great finales. So you have something like Ben Stokes 135 at Headingley, and you have an amazing climax to a cricket match that otherwise was quite dull. If a team's potentially chasing 700 to win it, that actually means for 80-90% of the match, they were being battered. Somerset versus Surrey was a fantastic, high-quality cricket match from beginning to end, where it was always in the balance. It started with Kemar Roach getting Lewis Goldworthy out, second ball, and you're thinking, oh, there's going to be Seamers here. Yes, Shakib Al-Hassan's been signed by Surrey, but we're going to have like the two titans of Div 1 going up against each other. And actually, it turned
Brett
into
Randall.
Brett Randall, of course, who could forget. It turned into a perfect 300 place, 300 first innings. We had Tom Curran playing a wonderful innings in his first Red Bull match back in 2 years, whacking it, getting 80 off 70 to kind of lift Surrey up to parity. And then Somerset, having been bowled out for 220, with Tom Banton coming in at 11, injured, batting without moving his feet at all, gets them up to a lead of, I think Surrey needed 221 to win, and it was in about 45 overs. It wasn't a mental run rate. Then, out of nowhere, or not out of nowhere, you have Jack Leach and Archie Vaughan, the England kind of talismanic spinner, the kid in his second first class match. And just as you think that Surrey are getting there, they've got 6-7 wickets in hand to the last hour. People say they were going to shake hands. I still don't believe that. You have this wonderful climactic final hour, 2 wickets in the last 5 minutes, title on the line, match of the season, has to be, unless you've got a better one.
Well, I feel like I'm about to preempt your moment of the season. Now, I tried really hard to think the best game I was at, and I reckon I've been at north of 50 games domestically this season. I can tell you the worst game I saw, and that was day one. Yeah. Middlesex Glamorgan and Sam Northeast, 335 not out. Well done. It was well done. Records were broken.
Oh man.
It was truly, and I honestly don't think any of the 22 players involved, including Sam himself, would disagree. I thought it was a dreadful game of cricket, and actually typified a lot of the early sort of those couple of rounds with the April cooker. I think I worked out last week. I think Northants took 11 wickets in 2 rounds. They took in the second game. Ryan Higgins TFC'd. Sorry, not TFC'd. He'd have bowled, I guess. Ryan Higgins sat at number 5 with his pads on, while Middlesex were 550 for 2. And never got a go. That start left me really cold. I'm not going to take the one that is definitely your moment of the season. I'm going to just preempt it by saying I assume we're talking Cheltenham ties.
We are indeed.
So we'll save that and talk about that in a minute. But in the absence of that, I thought I'd go for the 2 games I wasn't at, and 2 teams who ended very long winless runs. And maybe I am the romance guy here, and you're the clinical.
I never expected that.
There was Gloucester ending their 18-game winless run against Northants, and there was Derbyshire winning at home for the first time in half a decade, which I just think is extraordinary.
Wait, say that again. I've missed that statistic completely. Derbyshire won at home for the first time in half a decade.
In 5 years, yeah. So half a decade. Yeah.
That is a whoopsie.
So, look, I didn't watch much of either game. We had Miles Hammond on here after Gloucester won their one, and I just think there's a relief that's really relatable. When you listen to players who've been through, and maybe it's because we're both like long-suffering lower league football fans, and there's an energy to it, isn't there? When you actually win a game, and you've not done it for such a long time, and you've sort of forgotten how to do it, and you kind of start losing games from weird positions and drawing games that you should have won, and sometimes just get battered normally as well. I think Derbyshire winning for the first time at Derby since 2019 is extraordinary. They chased 27 without loss to beat Glamorgan, who were involved in a lot of the perceived games this season. And yeah, I don't know. It just, while we're on Derby, I guess the other potential player of the season who won't get mentioned. I don't know what am I talking about. I'm thinking wrong county. I was going to mention Colin Ingram, but he plays for Glamorgan.
Let's run with Glamorgan.
But
Nick, let's run with Glamorgan.
Yes, and let's go straight into your moment of the season.
Yes. So, keeping track of score, player of the season, John Simpson, match of the season, I'm giving myself that one. The Somerset Surrey, I think
Fine.
as much as the Derbyshire, fundamentally funny to not win it's a fortress down at Derbyshire.
For everyone else.
It's like the one in Shrek, which they actually broke into.
I know football cliches do this themselves, but at what point does it become an easy place to go?
An easy place to go. Isn't it always been an easy place to go, the Inclora County Ground? Moment of the season. Right. Why I didn't... Do you want to... We kind of already know what my one's going to be. Do you want to go first?
I went for, once again, I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something I've been there for, because I feel like the moment is something that you can detach.
Why didn't you invite me to this?
A bit of emotion.
There,
well, no, because I feel like we're a lot of the same games. I made, this is definitely recently biased speaking as well, but I thought the emotion around Gloucesters's blast win was a great thing. Actually, I thought David Payne was really spoke beautifully on here a couple of weeks ago about precisely that element of it. And I just thought it was great, and it was lovely watching an unfashionable side that definitely didn't come into the competition thinking they could win it or would win it turn up. And it was funny, a lot, the narrative in final stage has been what a poor final stage was. 3 games, none of which were close. Not a particularly free scoring pitch. A lot of guys missing, etc. from with England.
You'll remember the photos of James Bracey with Sid Lawrence more than you would if it was one night he chased.
Yeah, but I also think fundamentally one of the reasons there were three games that weren't very close is because one of the teams played out of their skin and absolutely battered the 2 other sides. So I've never
strikes again.
I've been to the last 6 final days. I've never seen a team play that well, but by a stretch. I mean, and yeah, I thought it was for all the poignant reasons alongside it. I've just written a long piece about all of this. In fact, you can read on the cricketer.com. There's a lot more to the story of a lot of individuals in that team, stuff that they've gone through as a adversity they've gone through, guys who couldn't be there. And it was nice to watch that happen in real time. But I will give way to your moment of the season, which, to be honest, I'd kind of not even. I'd put it. It was my match of the season, so I'd left it off after that. But it is quite clearly the moment of any season.
So James Bracey again. I think we're going to give the moment of the season award to James Bracey as a human, having been there in the midst of it all. Gloucestershire versus Glamorgan. Gloucestershire first innings get 179. Glamorgan first innings get 197. Gloucestershire then get 610 for 5 declared, setting Glamorgan a nominal, I don't know if that's the right word.
We've got enough, lads.
a theoretical 592 to win. Never, ever, ever going to be chased. Then, lo and behold, out Cheltenham. good point. You know what? Well, rather than, I've got the scorecard up. We managed to get down to the final over of day 4. Sam Northeast and Marnus Labuschagne centuries for Glamorgan had got them up to 309 for 4 before Labuschagne got out. They were only just halfway there. They still needed another bloody 300. Dan Douthwaite contributed with 39, Van der Gooten 31, Mason Crane, the season of his life with the bat, 43 not out, and it came down to the final over with Glamorgan needing 2 to win, facing Ajit Singh Dale. Mason Crane on strike, the number 11 McElroy at the non-striker's end. Mason Crane faces 4 dot balls, takes it down to 2 runs needed off 2 balls to win. He gets a single off the penultimate delivery, meaning 1 off 1 is required. James Bracey, behind the stumps, removes his glove and pops it in his back. After some point earlier in the season, the 2020 blast, he hadn't done that and he had missed his throw, etc., etc. What are we thinking of? We're thinking ball getting slashed through the covers, they run. We're thinking it hits a pad, they scamper through, they win, or maybe a run out. We're thinking maybe it's a swing and a miss. Bracey takes the ball and has an aim at the stumps. Something none of us are considering is a huge swing from Jamie McElroy, a really thick edge from McElroy, and then James Bracey taking a one-handed diving catch with his gloveless hand. He's got his inners on, and
standing closer.
standing closer. Very good point. And it's just, I implore you, if you had not seen this catch, go back, find it, because it is a type of catch you will have never seen watching cricket before. And it secured a tie in what would have been, and I've forgotten the statistic, the highest run chase in county championship history, or at least
first class.
At least
I think would
it have been in first class? I feel like there was something.
I feel like I've gone early on that. I should have.
I think you have, because I was about to say it, and then I got a frog in my throat. I went, don't do it. It was definitely the highest first class chase in England, like when cricket actually existed and when it wasn't like W.G. Grace hitting bankers everywhere or something like that.
Yeah, no, first class. Yeah, it was
first class. Wonderful. Just first class, so good
to win.
So good. Right. So I think, not that we're competing, but you won John Simpson. I won Surrey Somerset. James Bracey has won the moment of the season.
So it's a draw. It's 1-1-1 at the moment.
1-1-1. Cool. And we're going to move on to
the season. We also had James Bracey on here after that game. And my lasting memory of talking about it was that he was still, so we're all sat there being like, the best thing ever, what a catch.
Yeah.
And Bracey was still furious that we've missed out, we lost 8 points there.
That's true. I mean, they've failed. Well, I guess they succeeded in defending 591, but they failed to defend 592.
I remember saying to her this I love this image. It's one of those numbers where you know as the fielding team that it's probably going to be a record if you lose. And he said, and I remember speaking to a couple afterwards and said, I can't remember who it was, but I said to someone like, did you know it was record? And I can't remember who it was, but one of the players said to me, you didn't know, but you did kind of walk around going to each other like, if they chose this is probably us.
I've really enjoyed that. It will be a record. No one's ever done this in the history of the sport before.
What have we done?
Right, we're moving on to innings of the season. And do you have an innings, or have you? Oh no, you do have an innings, right? I think you have actually briefed me on what your one is, and I think we should mention it because I think it's a better answer than kind of just numbers, basically. And I've gone half numbers. Sam Northeast, we mentioned it, top of the show, 335, was it? Not out.
Yeah.
Big scores just leave me so cold most of the time, because what it normally means is like it's not actually it's very rarely entertaining to watch. I remember my friend saying he was at the Oval.
Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, genuinely. Well, Brian, if I was at the Rec watching Brian Lara getting 400, that would get me excited.
But I a friend of mine, you bored me. You bored me. Knock him over.
One of my friends, I remember he said he was at the Oval for Hashim Amla's triple century. And he was like, it was the most boring day of cricket I've ever watched, because you're 80 yards away, square to the wicket. You can't see anything that's going on. It's just lads just bowling to a guy having a net. But where the numbers do excite me and big scores do excite me was Sussex versus Leicestershire, and Louis Kimber getting 243 off 127 in this kind of doomed, in a losing course. They were chasing 463 to win, 464 to win. Louis Kimber arrived at the crease at 144 for 6 and proceeded to get 240 of 127, 24s, 21 sixes. He put on 240 runs with Ben Cox, who contributed 34. And the most painful part of all of this is they were so close. They were 8 down. They were 435 for 8. So they were 30 runs away, and they had 2 wickets in hand, and they lost both their wickets. And thank God it was Louis Kimber who got out, bowled by Nathan McAndrew, and not the other tail ender who, fun fact, was Josh Hull. And we go back to like the Stokes and Headingley. Like, if Stokes gets out, that's fine. Like, you can live, you can die being the hero. You cannot die being the twerp at the other end who just doesn't know how to bat and almost runs himself out. Amazing moment in history, by the way. How different is Jack Leach's life if Nathan Lyon holds on to that? Remarkable. And my little tidbit about Louis Kimber is, and this was told to me, I'm just relaying what Dan Weston, who is an analyst for a number of teams across the world, says to me. So, I mean, I'm just telling his story. And but he was signed. Dan Weston used to work with Leicestershire as like an analyst, and kind of a couple of years ago when Leicestershire went, effectively, this is thrown around a lot, the idea of teams moneyballing stuff, but I think this is actually a more accurate time to use the phrase. They basically went, we don't have the finances of other places. We need to look where other people aren't, basically. And Dan Weston built like not an algorithm, but he built a data set where he filtered the quality, the runs scored in second 11 county cricket by the quality of the attack, kind of like how many first team wickets are in there, how many first team appearances are in there. And Louis Kimber really, really stood out as an uncontracted player within those numbers. And so that's where Louis Kimber, who's a Lincolnshire lad, like his brother Nick Kimber was actually contracted to Surrey for a little bit, but he wasn't a professional. He didn't have a contract anywhere. And Leicestershire kind of plucked him out on the back of very strong second 11 performances. And, well, cut forward a couple of years and he was getting 240 in a losing course. Should have been 250, Louis. Idiot.
Well, the one regret is that he was... we've actually not had him on the podcast, but I interviewed him the week afterwards and said he was trying to nudge one into the offside for one when he got out. It's like...
Idiot.
Like, he's the first ball he tried to hit along the floor for 2.5 hours.
Sorry, before handing over to you, can't believe I forgot this. He hit an Ollie Robinson over for 43. There was 9 balls in it, but record,
of course that was the same
record.
And that was the same week that Dan Lawrence had taken Sherpa Shear for 31?
38.
38.
Yep. It was genuinely, I don't know how you rock up as Sherpa Shear to the England nets this following week. Just like, if someone hits me for 38, I don't know what. There's a phrase in chess where if you beat someone 5 times in a row, you adopt them. That's the phrase.
Dan Lawrence rolled up at training with Sherpa Shear going out the back of his car.
You got the papers. He's like, you're mine now. Right, go on. Your turn. Your turn.
I struggle with this. A lot of runs scored, weren't there? A lot of beginnings early season. But I actually went for Gareth Roderick's 137, I think it was, against Kent. And that, on the face of it, sounds pretty inane, I suppose. But it was the first day of the first game after Josh Baker's passing, and it was the morning that the team's done a sort of, emotionally charged minute silence, and a lot of the Worcester players have spoken since about how 117, 137, can't read my writing. A lot of the players have spoken since about how challenging that day was, but also how impossibly difficult it was to start the game straight after the silence and the emotions and the tears, and I don't know. I think in that situation, no one has any idea how they're going to react. And I remember interviewing Ed Pollock late in the season, who's very close to Josh, and Ed went out to open the batting against Nottinghamshire just after a minute silence. I think it was the week afterwards, and he said it was the hardest thing he's done in cricket, to go from the minute silence, tearing up, to facing Dylan Pennington 5 minutes later with the new ball. And yeah, I don't know. I think in the context of all that, particularly, no one knowing how they were going to react to being back out there. And to make 117 it was, and in what was ultimately a draw, but a draw in which Worcester made 620 odds. I think Jason Holder and Matt Waite made hundreds too. But yeah, I thought that was the start of a really remarkable show from Worcestershire. I think we'll talk about that more later.
Leave that there. We're going to speak further on Worcestershire later in the show. Feels a bit crass to put a number on that, but again, Nick, you've had wonderful answers today. I've really, really enjoyed them. Right, we're moving on to the dumbest part of the season. A bit of a change of pace. I'm going to go first on this one.
Should we just? How many have you got?
I've got one, and
I've got 4. So should we just bounce them off each other?
I'll just get mine out of the way, because then I'm
in the robot.
Oh god, right. I'm gonna get mine out of the way. We actually spoke about it really early on, like one of the first episodes of the show. It was Sussex when they said that they didn't believe in red ball cricket being played under floodlights. I've got the quote here. So for those who have rightly forgotten what happened here, they went off a bad light in their opening fixture of the season. They were chasing a victory. It potentially cost them a win. And they basically were like, they had one really good argument, which was like, it's so expensive to put these floodlights on. And if we're only going to gain a couple of overs, like it's financially not worth it. And that's a very powerful message, especially for a club that ended up getting promoted, to be like, this is the financial strife and financial state of the game, that we will sacrifice a win because we can literally not afford to turn the lights on. Instead, they put out a statement, or a Sussex spokesperson spoke to the Telegraph and said, firstly, we believe red ball cricket should absolutely be played under normal daylight conditions, and the use of floodlights in this format is not the way the game should be played. And that is just an absolute nonsense. Like, I don't know where they've got that from. It was so silly. But hey, they won the title, so fair.
I was just saying, what an alpha move to say, we don't even need the extra time.
We don't even need it.
But do you know what? So I was at home last week, and do you know what? I heard someone, I'm not going to say who, reiterate this point. And their view was, and I don't know if it's accurate or not, their view was that actually you turn the lights on and players very quickly go off when the artificial light intervenes or it takes over. Whereas without floodlights, you might actually play longer because you don't have the threat of artificial light intervening.
I don't hate that.
I think it's I thought it was a really good argument. But I couldn't take it seriously because all I could recall was this episode of the podcast where you said to Ashley Giles, I believe, do you believe in floodlights? Speak to the CEO of the one ground in the country, of course, that doesn't have any.
That's great. Like, I said it to George, but Ashley Giles. I asked George DeBell whether he thought floodlights were immoral. That was it. Anyway, that's my nomination. And somehow you're getting 4, so you should take the win here.
Right, I'm going for it. I'll just list them and we can expand them. Firstly, the threat of a shared trophy. Okay. Secondly, the April Kookaburra rounds. Third, backed gauges. And fourthly, the Bristol abandonment because a hybrid pitch bounced and hit 2 people on the hand. But let's go with the first 3 mainly. Yeah. Fourth one's a bit of a knockoff. I think back gauges might be the dumbest thing in the game. And in a game in a game as already overcomplicated as this, a game that goes out of its own way to add nonsense, adding a situation where if your bat has swollen in the boot of your car due to moisture on a Wednesday night, let's say, and suddenly someone shoves a ring through it and it doesn't go through, and you get docked 12 points, nearly a whole win, because there's another millimetre on your bat. Look, there needs to be a line somewhere. The day that you can't have Andre Russell walking up to bat with a door, like that would be there needs to be you can't like wheel out an oak tree and be like, go on, get past this. But we're talking about a situation where, as the bat makers have been very keen to stress in recent weeks, they're made of wood, and they've not had to stress that bit. But because they're made of wood, they can change. They can grow essentially by drying out, by taking on moisture,
so I didn't realize that.
by adding a layer of tape around the edge because it's holding it together, because it's chipped, because an indentation on the outside edge has changed the shape slightly. A lot of things can happen. Now, firstly, I'm not buying the advantage thing. Yeah, you might hit it a bit harder. You won't. But yeah, you might also, and are probably more likely to nick off the extra millimetre. Yeah. And on top of that, look, you've got a ludicrous, the size of points deduction is mental. Having an issue with Essex that began in April and was only decided at the end of August is also mental. Worcestershire then getting their fine suspended for next year on the grounds essentially that the points deduction would harm their blast bid, is also mental. There is not a single part of this that makes sense, to the point that I know counties who have gone out and bought 8 or 9 Gunner Moore bat gauges and just thrown them in the dressing room and said, before you go out to bat, make sure you put this through them. Teams have got guys walking around. Some teams have got guys who have got one guy with a bat gauge. I don't think any teams have yet put one on the door of the change room, being like, make sure you shove it through when you get out to bat.
Yeah,
but
that sounds quite sensible.
But it's the most sensible.
So draconian.
I spoke to a couple of coaches last week and was given one very sensible solution, which was that if your bat passes a pre-season test, two sensible solutions. If your bat passes a pre-season test, like on the same day when you have all the anti-corruption chats and stuff like that, everyone bring your bats, shove it through the thing. If it goes through it, you're good for the season with it. Or do it at source. The bat makers say this is not something being caused by them. When it leaves the bat manufacturers, they've all got to be licensed. The bat manufacturers put it through their apparatus. If it goes through, they tick it, done, sorted. But we cannot have a situation where people are being randomly checked for the size of their bat. Worcestershire got off lightly as well because, one of the reasons Worcestershire got off lightly was because Josh Cobb, I think I'm right in saying, never faced a ball with the bat. But I don't think the 20 odd that Farouz Koshi got with his bat was worth the 12 points that Essex were docked. And I certainly don't think it was worth a 4-month investigation. It's nonsense.
What were they investigating? I feel like,
I think it was a lot of. I'd guess it was a lot of appeals and counter appeals and stuff. But
I think your point about the test it at source, just get it done, like one and done ahead of time. Yes, these are legal for the season ahead. Far more sensible, and I've enjoyed greatly. Let's continue on to your next one. You can't have 3 minutes explaining every single.
No. Well, I think some of these are easier than others. I think the April Kookaburra rounds is kind of the end of the experiment phase now. They've done it at the start, they've done the end, they've done the middle. I think it's safe to say that it's worked better at the middle and the end than it did at the start, when truly the cricket was bad.
But it's so weird that, because there was for quite a long period of time this idea that the reason you didn't want the Duke's ball was because it nips around so much, and then damp winter, like April wickets.
But that's not what the data says, is it? Around batting.
But it's not what the data says. Exactly. It says the wickets are fresh and they're feather beds. That's the phrase. That was the word that kept being used.
Well, this was. I think I'd like to think what the April round showed was that if you're trying to replicate what you get elsewhere with the Kookaburra, you cannot do that in April in England after a wet spring, soft pitches, soft ball, lush outfields. You're not getting a reverse swing. You're not getting the ball roughed up. You are ending up with essentially the worst of all worlds, which is a damp Kookaburra that takes on and absorbs water, with a small seam that kind of that just disintegrates with the same moisture on pitches that aren't conducive to reverse, to bounce, to pace, any of the things that England will encounter down under with the Kookaburra. They'll have the shock of their lives. They rock up at, the Wacker, which they don't go to anymore, and go, but hang on, but when they used to have
new road at all.
Sam,
why is it
what's no one got 330? But no, it's worked in different ways because it's forced teams to do different things. I get all that, but it was painful to watch in April, and I would. I don't think we should do that again.
Can I input a little sub award? One we were going to do, which we didn't do.
Ball of the year,
Spell of the year. Spell of the year. I just want to then give a shout out to, in that context of the Kookaburra in April, Sam Cook going 10 foot against Notts was very, very good. Very, very good. Right, continue.
The other one, the threat of a shared trophy. Was, look, I guess this slightly goes back to something you said about the bat gauge there. Like, cricket has this thing where you need to put an endpoint on things. You need to have an answer for what if this happens.
Yeah,
I think we touched on this last week as well.
We did this last week. Yeah.
Essentially, if what you come up with as the last resort is bad enough that when you get there you're going to change it, think of something better. A bowl out, I'm sorry, is better than a shared trophy. Like, it's true though, isn't it? Like, they had one boundary count back, they used it once, and we can't have that again. Like, it's they didn't want to bowl out because they thought that wasn't fair, so they got, okay, let's share the trophy. but then they share the trophy and you go, well, then you have the threat of sharing a trophy and everyone goes, actually, if we have a window, today we will just play 20 overs. So
Yeah.
like that was the game for a day was sensible. It's like, oh, we finally managed it. But yeah, that. But mainly
have we got
back gauges.
Have we gone through all of yours? You're submitting back gauges.
As my
I think yours is the.
What was yours again?
Especially mine was a Sussex picking a fight.
I've gone through too much emotion here.
Mine was Sussex picking a fight with light, effectively.
Yeah. I think Sussex winning the title weakens your argument. You really
I think it strengthens it because it shows that they were playing for something. They genuinely risked success.
I think you needed Sussex to come third and have Middlesex 9 down the last round of the season.
That'd be amazing. God, I wish that happened. Right, you know what? You've swung me just at the end there because I was going to say you presented like something stupid and how it was very easily rectifiable. I'll give that to back.
Turning the light on seems quite rectifiable to me.
Yeah, that's true. Right, I'm going to give it to back gauges, especially because you said how it could be solved and how it's basically costing teams. Can you imagine if Essex could have won the league?
They were in the title race. They were in the title race.
We're now moving on to disappointment of the season, and one of my nominations here kind of goes into the dumbest thing of that, the way that you reflected it. So disappointment. I was a bit harsh. I just put Lancashire in there, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I went for.
I was like, what has happened there? And so if you've got Lancashire, you can cover that. I'm going to go with, again, this might maybe best fits in the dumbest part, the breaks between the One Day Cup and T20 group stage and finals just has to stop. It cannot be the case that
it's not stopping next year.
It's not stopping next year, but it's just, I always think like your friends who actually who like cricket but don't love it are sometimes the best litmus tests for these things. And one of my friends, he plays on 4 or 5 Saturdays a year. He's a footballer who just likes having a hit and a run out and having a beer on a Saturday every now and then. If the test match is on, he'll whack it on. If you say to him, I've got tickets to the over, he'll be like, brilliant, can't wait, let's go. He was chatting to me the other day. He was like, I saw there was a One Day Cup final. And he's like, what? But he's like, but I saw the group stages were ages and he's trying. If he had the opportunity to follow a storyline to its completion, he would know and he would do that. And he would click on the Crick Info app or he'd click on BBC Sport and he'd see how the competitions are going. But he can't be bothered. And it's not that he can't. Well, he can be bothered. It's just he's not given the chance to follow a storyline. It's so dumb. It's so counterproductive. And if it's because players want to play competitions in blocks, then I have no sympathy at all. They're the best in the world and the best in the country at playing cricket. They can do the bit that's difficult. There we go.
For an extended version of that answer, you can go back to week 4, I think it was, with Daryl Mitchell.
Indeed.
When you pitched that, I went lanked as an aside. I also wrote September overseas recruits. I don't mean all of them. I don't mean Shakib, and I don't think I mean Anson Phillip or Kemar Holder either. But I thought the arrival.
Who do you mean?
I thought the arrival of a bunch of uncapped New Zealand seamers who contributed between them very little at the expense of mainly in teams, and where it irritated me was in teams who had nothing on the line. This obsession with having an overseas player, kind of regardless. Like there are a lot of good players. There are a lot of decent cricketers being released at the end of the season, as there were last year. And I think there were too many people in too small a circuit to be drafting in guys who are going to make, no discernible impact with no sort of long-term future at the club, or in county cricket, when you could be using 2 or 3 rounds at the end of the season to look at someone who you might keep, you might release, or to look at someone who's just been released from elsewhere. I don't know. I don't think it reflects very well on clubs who say they don't have any money, to be honest. Got no money, but you can bring overseas players over, stick them up in a house, pay for their airfares, whatever. I don't think it's a great look. I'd extend that to someone like Chahal at Northants, class bowler, but what were Northants paying for? They couldn't get out of their One Day Cup group. They couldn't get promoted. And suddenly you've signed an Indian leg spinner at the expense of a 22-year-old leg about to be released from your own club. I don't get that. And I don't like sort of the pleading poverty that a lot of that there is a lot of that is then suddenly, I don't know, like, do you know what I mean? Suddenly
Yeah,
reversed.
I thought it was. I thought you explained it very well.
On Lanks, I just thought they were bizarre. I didn't get it. That they've had injuries. They've had a lot of guys playing franchise cricket that Daniel Kidney, the chief executive, spoke about last week. But the way they looked at the end, I mean, they had a 16-year-old batting at 4 while they had an Indian overseas player batting at 8. Like, baffled me. There was a lot of, I felt for Keaton Jennings and Josh Bohannon, Tom Bailey, Luke Wells, like they're a very, very inexperienced core. And I think I felt on a level for Dale Benkenstein as well. Like, he had a very, they just looked. I think Paul Edwards right for the cricket to describe their relegation as a cousin of inevitable from week 1, which was a lovely turn of phrase. And I don't know if I'd go quite that extreme, but or quite that early, but certainly from quite a long way out, you looked at Lanks and gone, God, like they've made this half themselves. Even the Nathan Lyon signing, it was made with the best intentions in the world. It was probably signed, the interest would have been there before Tom Hartley went to India, and but actually in the end, you ended up with a situation where Lyon played the first 7 games as an off spinner in a pretty wet summer, reducing Hartley's chance in the process, taking up an overseas spot. Tom Bruce, the other overseas, didn't score a run, and actually they almost cut off their nose to spite their face, and then it didn't quite work. They've not seen this. Didn't see much of Jimmy. They saw one game of Jimmy Anderson. They don't, hardly any of Sakeeper Moods. Red Ball wise, none of Liam Livingston. I'm fairly certain Phil Salt didn't play a Red Ball game this year.
No, they didn't. They didn't play this year.
Luke Woods spent a lot of time not playing. I don't think Luke Woods played much, if any, Red Ball either. So.
I think we've covered Lanks. I reckon they
anything to add? Did you have anything specific on your? Obviously,
really.
they got to the course in the blast, but they were a very young team. I think as Dale Benkenstein said yesterday, actually, you can't be that inexperienced in Division 1. And
they're like almost too young. I'd be amazed if I'll be interested to see if someone. I'll be interested to see if some of the kind of the youngsters that came through, whether they then play next year or whether it's like years until they come again. Or I remember hearing through like a friend of a friend the idea that, and this is kind of like fan suspicion as opposed to anything else, the idea that like the promotion of youth was kind of there to cover leadership's backs. Like we're developing people, and it's like, well, we're losing. We're Lancashire, and we want to do well. Anyway, that was basically big club, didn't do very well, disappointing. Sorry, guys. Right, to finish off, who wins that one? I'm giving it to my one because I like the one day cup thing. So what does that make it? 2-2 for the deciding round.
2-2, and Bracey's stuck on 1.
Team of the season.
I thought we're going surprise this season. I thought.
Well, you can win this one because I hadn't written that one down.
No, okay. Well,
I think we've got 6 minutes to round this off. By the way,
cool.
So we need
very quickly on surprise season. I went for Ollie Robinson, Sussex Ollie Robinson.
Lovely. That's a lovely answer.
I thought he was. He gets every time he plays, people seem to be debating his fitness and his will and all this stuff. And I thought he did great. And actually, a couple of interesting stats on him because around the fitness stuff, no seamer in the country played more games across the Championship and the Blast combined than Ollie Robinson this year.
Nice.
3 seamers bowled more in the Blast. 8 seamers bowled more in the Championship. And I feel like everyone's always known he can do it, but everyone kind of wanted to see him go away and, I don't know, like almost just do the grind. I spoke to him on Sunday at Hove after they won the title, and he said, "Are you knackered?" And he said, "Look, I'm ready for October." But he said, "Look, if I'd been thinking about England, I would probably miss a game or 2 here in the run-in." But he said, "I was thinking about Sussex. We had a title to win, so he played every game. We played 12 out of 14 Championship games." I guess that's not necessarily a surprise. That he's actually had more prolific Championship years. I think the surprise of his white ball cricket is Ollie Robinson was one of the very top leading bowlers in the whole blast. And I'll tell you the biggest surprise for Ollie Robinson was to Sussex, because Sussex came into this season, they might not have seen him at all. If he'd still been part of England's plans, they wouldn't have seen him. They may well not have gone up. They may well not have got finals day, whatever. Who knows? But them having him was enormous for them. But I also think him having them was really good for him. He's a gun bowler. And I was really pleased with him, because I feel like he's spent a lot of time answering questions about the same old stuff, and it's kind of been quite nice to just see him do really well. He's quality, and I do think England would be better in Pakistan if he was there. So.
Oh, you've been swung by a conversation. That's called recency bias. You like the guy, nice chat.
No. He was bloody good last time around in Pakistan.
He was bloody right. That's a conversation for another day. Conversation.
It's not a podcast, has it? That's what wisdom's for. Yaz, 2 shout-outs.
Yeah, that's reminded me of my biggest regret of the season. Very quickly, it was when we had Tamal Mills on, and I thought it was a good question and a funny question to ask. Like, why is Ollie Robinson good at white ball? And I meant it like he bowls 80 mile an hour top of the stumps. And I remember just went lead balloon. It just didn't go down. I was like, sorry. Right. Team of the season, not as an 1 through 11.
No.
We're going to I'm just going to tee you up here, Nick, because obviously Surrey spoke at length to Gareth Batty last week. Sussex have had a fantastic season where the kind of fruits of their youth development labour over the past few seasons have come to bear. But I think a very special mention needs to be made to Worcestershire, not just because of the kind of tragedy of Josh Baker at the beginning of the year, but I think that's baked into the whole idea that this is only the second time they've stayed up ever in their history, and from a position where the ground's underwater, they're playing away from home. Ashley Giles is out on the kind of banging the drum to almost save the club to finish, kind of mid-table in Division 1, an incredible achievement.
Yeah, you've covered it there.
Too easy then. You can wrap it up.
See ya. No, they have been incredible. They reached they very nearly got to the semis of the One Day Cup as well. They had Warwickshire 80 odd for 5, chasing 280. With essentially with a club team, they had 3 club cricketers who they'd picked up for that month. One of whom's since been signed permanently, Tom Hindley.
Yep.
And they had a children's bowling attack. Jack Home went from the quarter-final to the Super Fours to play at Loughborough against a bunch of 17-year-olds, his own age. And God, like the injuries they've had the injuries they had to put up as well in the Championship. They've been missing Ben Gibbon, Adam Finch, Yadi Singh. I'll definitely be missing people here. Matt Waite missed a portion of the season bowling wise. Brett D'Oliveira missed the One Day Cup, the club captain with a frozen shoulder, I think they called it, which sounds hideous.
Cold.
And they've just had Joe Leach, and Joe Leach's knee was done, so he announced his retirement, and they patched it back up, and he came back out to finish. And I think they've done incredibly well, even without all the stuff they've been through. The fact that Worcester, I think it was Worcestershire's highest first division finish since 2000. I think right in saying, since it was split to 2 divisions. To do that in this year, having lost a lot of players in pre-season to Notts as well. And then to said about, as we talked about with Gareth Roderick's 100, like to come back from the tragedy and around Josh Baker, I don't really know how they've done it, to be honest. And now they'll get to winter, and New Road will flood again, and they'll come back and we'll be in the same position at the start of next season, because that is unavoidable. It's I'm sat here looking out the window now. It's lashing down. It kind of is, and they are a small, tight club dealing with a lot more than a club of their size should be able to put up with. But they've managed it. I remember speaking to their groundsman in pre-season, and I said, what was the bleakest day? Interviewed him back in February after the 4th of their 8 floods. I said, what was the bleakest day? And he said, well, one of the floods had finished and gone down again. So me and the ground staff me and the other ground staff got our hoses out, and we jet washed all the stands and the various pavilions, cleared them of all the silt and the mud, and essentially made the stands look white again. And he said, 8 hours, 8 hour day, good day's work, knackered, put the hoses down, went home, went to bed, woke up the next morning, there was a new flood. I hugely admire them as a club. As I said, they've got it tough, but they've done remarkably well.
Right. That's it for the county conversation. This year's winner of the end of season awards goes to James Bracey with 1 point. We lost points over the course of the thing. But right, to run through from top to bottom, player of the season, John Simpson, match of the season, Somerset versus Surrey, moment of the season. I think we gave it to Gloucestershire and James Bracey as a whole, winning the competition, the one-handed catch, the trophy of Sid Lawrence. Innings of the season, I think we called that a draw as well. Louis Kimber and Gareth Roderick. I mean, you know what? We got into a bit of chaos at the end here, so I think we're going to let the final
dumbest went to the back gauges. Lancashire with disappointment. Ollie Robinson was a surprise, and Worcestershire.
Team of the season was Worcestershire. Right, for one final time this year, Nick, listen up. Nobody covers county cricket like the Cricketer, and you can get access to our coverage of all 18 teams online from as little as £3.99 a month. Our own team of county champions have now won the outstanding online coverage of domestic cricket prize at the ECB Domestic Cricket Journalism Awards for 6 years running. So you don't have to take our word for it. Just click in the show notes to subscribe. Thank you, Nick. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honour. It's been a treat. And we'll be back with more cricketer content for your eyes, at least, if not for your ears, very soon. Goodbye.